This is more a sound check for everyone joining us more than anything, but thank you everybody for joining us and taking the time out of your days to watch these virtual forums that we've been putting on. We will be getting started here in just a few minutes, about 5 minutes, and we'll go ahead and get things started. We will be hearing from 3 of our candidates in Ward 4 today. We're looking forward to the discussions. If you can see the loading screen, you can see that you're welcome to ask questions in the chat. However, if you'd like the question to be asked during the forum, phrase it in a way that each candidate can answer it equally. We don't allow any kind of pointed questions. So that's free to use the chat. Zane is hanging out, watching that, and he'll be keeping an eye on things if anyone else has any questions or anything for the chamber. If anyone has any questions, or if there's anyone from the media that needs permissions, feel free to direct message either Zane or I, and we'll make sure we get you the permissions on that. This is being recorded, so we will be sharing this video on YouTube as soon as we can, get it edited and uploaded. We will, of course, put it on our social media and our YouTube page for everyone to share. Once we get started at 4 o'clock, we will allow each candidate to make a 3-minute opening statement. I am the timekeeper for these forums, so I will let each candidate know when they have 30 seconds remaining on their responses. Once we get the opening statements, we will then go to the questions. We have about 10 or so that we're going to try and get through. Once we get about 10 minutes till 5 o'clock, we'll conclude the forum and then allow each candidate to make a 3-minute closing statement. We'll go ahead and get started here in just a few more minutes. Alrighty, I think we'll go ahead and start things up here at our Zoom conference and forum. Thank you everybody for joining us. My name is Taylor Shelton. I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Sustainability for the Fayetteville Chamber of Commerce. I've been the moderator and coordinator for these virtual forums. Thank you to everybody that has been joining us through these series of virtual forums. It's the first time that we've tried anything like this. Typically we get to partner with our library in order to put these on and share them, but we've had to make do with what we can and adapt with technology. We will be allowing the candidates to start with their 3-minute opening statements. We will go ahead and get into that so we can get to our questions. Mr. Firecat, I've got you my top left first here. So if you'd like to begin with your opening statement, we'll start with you.
All right, I appreciate it. I'm Adam Firecat, running for Ward 4, Position 2. This isn't my first rodeo. I am a recurring character in the Fayetteville political scene. I ended up initially starting my path in that direction back in 2008 when I ran for mayor. At that time, I had lost everything, and the last straw was losing a home to an ordinance based on how many parking spaces were afforded to how many cars. And this gets into arguments of style and preference and what people will find attractive and not. And I found these ordinances were negatively impacting because it was all just about personal opinion. It did not have practical application outside of people just not liking things a whole lot. And that just started the ball rolling. I also got into the city budgets. I've got all the city budgets all the way back to 96, back in Hannah's days. And I found at that time we were $201,760,000 in debt, and that was under discussed, and that was a dangerous place to be for the city. And it took us a while to kind of dig out of that debt, and we broke even in about 2013. The focus on the budget at the time wasn't there. The focus was, can we get a new park? Can we get all sorts of bells and whistles? Nobody seemed to be talking about how should we take care of this debt? What's the best way to do it? And at those financial decisions, we were due to reach our max limit as dictated by the state. And when the state determines we've reached our max limit, they have the option to step in and take over city functions. And that's a dangerous place to be. I found that financial responsibility should come first, that their priorities, that we've been putting a bunch of wants before needs. And so I ended up getting more involved in learning, because I found people get mad about, they know what they think. They rarely know why they think it. So I got into the numbers for that reason. And again, the budgets are in depth, and I invite you to do so, but it's some heavy reading, and I don't regret getting in. It's it's been a great experience. And I've met great people. I've met candidates I've run against, and they've been really cool. And
30 seconds.
I want to continue to run and hopefully be in a position where I can help in what I feel is the best decisions to be made with needs before wants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell, we'll now go to you for your opening statement. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds.
Taylor, am I on mute right now, or can you hear me?
You're good.
Okay. My name is Paul Waddell. I'm 35 years old. I have lived in Fayetteville for about the past 15 years. I lived the majority of my adult life all in the Ward 4 area. I've lived on the west side of Ward 4 or the west side of Interstate 49 off Salem Drive for several years. I've also lived on the east side of Ward 4 or the east side of the interstate in the University Heights for over a decade. I'm in tune to the area, and I'm in tune to a lot of the concerns of the residents of Ward 4. I believe that my values in education are something that make me a better candidate for this position. I have an economics degree from the University of Arkansas, specifically in finance. I also have a law degree from the University of Arkansas School of Law. I believe that my economics degree would be a major asset to the city in terms of, like Mr. Firecat said, managing budgets, providing financing, maintaining fiscal responsibility. I also think my law degree would be a major asset to the council in terms of contemplating, implementing, drafting ordinances and resolutions. I was licensed to practice law in the year 2012. I've been practicing law ever since then. I primarily handle criminal law, immigration law, family law, and immigration, or personal injury. I have a lot of experience handling really delicate and complex legal issues and bringing resolution to them. I believe that it's my education and my background that will make me probably the best candidate for this position. I believe that Fayetteville needs more of a progressive moderate, not somebody so left or so right, somebody that is going to really listen to the residents, somebody that will speak up and voice the concerns of the residents. I believe that we don't need somebody that is coming, that we don't have somebody coming in with extreme views or hidden agendas. I genuinely am just coming into this for the first time running for public office, trying to just represent Ward 4. I believe that the main concerns that Ward 4 residents want are the core functions of the city, meaning proper funding for police, proper funding for fire, waste management, that they want to see ease of transportation mobility, that they want to see proper well-maintained infrastructure. And I believe I'm the best candidate to try to meet all those needs. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Smith, we will now go to you for your opening statement.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for hosting us. I'm Kyle Smith. I'm City Council member for Fayetteville Ward 4. When I was appointed to fill this vacancy 3 years ago, I believe I was the first City Council member ever from west of the interstate. And today, I'm asking everyone for your votes so I can continue representing you and the unique interests of West Fayetteville for another 4 years. I'm a public school teacher and a 23-year resident of Fayetteville, but really I grew up in Fayetteville, visiting my grandparents over the summers. They moved here in the 60s so that my grandpa could manage Ozarks Electric Cooperative. And my best childhood memories are coming to Fayetteville to visit. That was back when Weddington was still a 2-lane road, so a lot's changed since then. My mom moved us back to town in '97, and I finished my senior year of high school here at Fayetteville High School. After that, I went off and earned a bachelor's degree in computer science from the Rochester Institute of Technology. So I went away for a bit, like a lot of us do, but I knew I was coming back because Fayetteville's always been home, I think even before I had an address here. I got my master's in secondary education here at the U of A and added my name to the sidewalk right in front of Bell Engineering because that was a Fayetteville tradition that I wasn't willing to miss out on. My first start in local politics was volunteering for the campaign for the city's first non-discrimination ordinance. After that one failed, I wrote the second one. And then I led the campaign that eventually saw it passed. So I've been to a few of these chamber forums over the years, because after that we stayed in electoral politics and got very involved in all of the operations of city council. So this is my first appearance at one of these as a candidate, and I've always been in the audience. And from the audience, I've learned just how important these conversations are to identifying, the qualities of a good city council representative, and deciding who in the room brings those to the table. So it was here that I learned that what I want in my city council members, and that comes down to a few things. I really want good listeners that truly understand the concerns that residents bring. I want problem solvers who get to work addressing those concerns in creative ways and collaborative ways. And I want fighters on the city council who will advocate for you, the people, even when it's hard to do, and stand up for what's right. You also need city council members with a vision that's focused on the future and not just the past, who are able to see the big picture of what our city is and what it can become.
30 seconds.
But also you have to understand how to get the details right. I think I've demonstrated those qualities over my last 3 years of service. I'm grateful to have had that opportunity to bring thoughtful leadership to the city council, and I'm asking for everyone's vote to continue our work together.
Thank you, sir. We will now go to our first question. Mr. Waddell, we'll go to you first. Why did you decide to run for office?
I think everybody has different goals and different priorities. And I think a lot of people's goals and priorities change throughout a course of life or through life experiences. And for me personally, I was real focused on my personal life and my business. And last year I was diagnosed with cancer and went through extensive medical treatment, including surgery, chemotherapy, and it was life-changing for me. It caused me to reassess my priorities, and I started realizing what was important in life. I started realizing it was friends, family, community, and quality of life. And when I was going through all that treatment, it was intense chemotherapy that caused me to kind of be restricted to home. I spent a lot of time at my house just looking out my window, watching the birds, watching the wildlife. And as many of you know, Markham Hill development was occurring, or as you know right now, is being deforested and bulldozed. And that was a major spark for me. I started really wondering what other neighbors thought about it, what other residents in the city thought about it. And as I started reaching out, I heard overwhelming support for Markham Hill, for the preservation of Markham Hill. And I started wondering why the council was not speaking up and not representing these concerns. I started investigating a little bit more into the city and their goals and priorities. And then I realized that the city's top priority is infill. And I disagree with that. I believe that the city should manage our expected growth, and that as we manage that expected growth, we should be preserving green spaces and increasing green spaces, that we should continue just to listen to the residents and not just try to infill Fayetteville with quantity over quality growth. The Markham Hill development was a major spark for me to get involved. It also caused me to look into other issues as far as affordable housing, flooding, traffic congestion. It was really that development that really got me moved into this position as a candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Smith, we'll now go to you next. What made you decide to run for office?
I'm running for city council because city government needs leaders who will do more than just give back a little bit. We need city council members who will lead because they have a vision for what Fayetteville is and what it can become. A lot of folks think that the city is some outside entity that does things for us, or in a worst case scenario, does things to us. But really the city is us. It's all of us together, and the operations of the city are what we do together. We choose our leaders to represent our interests so that we can do more together instead of everybody being on their own. That's always my goal, to serve and to work for you, the voters and the residents of Fayetteville. You don't lead by spending 4 years only representing the people who agree with you. You have to listen and consider everyone's needs over the course of that time and weave them all together into solutions that are compromise and work for everyone, but still move us in the right direction toward our shared vision. Here in Fayetteville, I think we take care of each other. We knew the pandemic cliche of we're all in this together long before COVID-19 hit. And I think that's one of the things we do really well. A city government's goal really shouldn't be anything less than making everyone's lives better. That's the same reason that I'm a school teacher. That investment in the future of individuals and setting them up with a strong foundation to build their own success is the same passion that I bring to City Council.
Are you speaking?
Sorry. Yes, I was muted there. Mr. Firecat, we'll now go to you for your question. Why did you decide to run for office?
I've never stopped deciding to run for office back in 2008. I would argue I've been running for office quite some time. I suppose I could be convinced to stop under the right circumstances, but I haven't seen them yet. I suppose I think it's important to say no. No, you can't have what you want. No, you're not going to get the park because we've got things to pay for, including police, fire, infrastructure, and paying the light bill. No, we're not going to give you everything you desire. And we're going to put our needs before our wants. And I think that's a more important step, especially if we're going to talk about what the responsibility of the city is. It's the responsibility of the city to take care of its citizens, and that doesn't mean talking about wants every five. It's not that we can't have nice things, but let's get the priorities straight. Ultimately, I've also think that my role is a bit preventative when we talk about style, and style should be the word of the law. I don't think ordinances should be passed based off of how things look. But this is pretty similar to my intro. Having been said, I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will now go to the next question. Councilmember Smith, we'll start with you. What do you believe is the #1 issue facing Fayetteville residents?
Well, unfortunately, right now, I think the biggest issue facing everyone is the global pandemic. Hopefully that won't be the case for the full 4 years. And I always say that the next biggest issue is climate and climate change. Now, as we're often reminded, the city can't deal with that on our own. So I look for the ways that we can address our climate issues through our local policy. And I fall to our biggest issue is housing. Now, some will tell you that it's infill, but I don't think that when we talk about housing, that's necessarily what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the places where people live, and how we build that is absolutely critical to all of the climate issues and the environment. Land use is part of managing our natural resources. It's how we as a city do our part for climate change, but it also influences the traffic patterns, our carbon emissions, and really the quality of life for our residents. And I think that last part is most important usually for voters. Safe and secure housing ought to be a human right, and available and affordable housing should be a cornerstone of our local economy. And it ought to be the way that we envision our neighborhoods. At a municipal level, planning for housing really is the binder that hits all the other topics that you might be interested in. Whatever you think the #1 issue is, if it's taxes, you probably want us to consider our development patterns and the long-term infrastructure maintenance costs that come with building. If your #1 issue is safety, then how we design our natural or our built environment around us has major influences on crime and security. In West Fayetteville, we have a growing number of car break-ins, and it's just easier to break into a car that's sitting in a driveway that you can't see from inside the house. The style of our housing plays a part in that. If your #1 issue is education, there's a school board for that, and the city doesn't directly manage education, but the way we plan our neighborhoods, whether or not they include a variety of housing types, is essential to helping our school district draw equitable attendance zones and address the socioeconomic achievement gaps in our classrooms. And if just general economic health is your thing, then all of our land use policies influence development and how they invest in our economy. Landlords and renters are a huge sector of our local economy. And like Mr. Firecat talked about in his opening, our housing decisions can have adverse effects, or they can improve the quality of life for folks. That's what I believe is the number one issue. And as we talk about other issues, I find more and more they all come back to housing.
Thank you. Mr. Firecat, we will now go to you for the same question. What do you believe is the number one issue facing Fayetteville residents?
Well, I would stress the same thing in terms of that there's this, I don't know if anyone's heard, there's this disease going around lately, and it's affecting people. Having been said, I think it's important to get better numbers from that, but there's a problem about affordability to get our best numbers to make the best decisions to approach that. And that becomes, there's a group called NAMIDA that's a little bit off of Dixon. You have to set an appointment, but they give an antibody test. The antibody test is cost about $99 per person, unless you're an educator, or unless you're a medical professional, and then it's about $70. And most people aren't wanting to throw that around. So essential decision-making based from the pandemic is going to be difficult to do just based on the affordability of our ability to do that. Outside of that, I think the biggest theme is just about priorities, about why we're making the decisions, in that we're making sure that this is not just what you want. This is what we need. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell, same question. What do you believe is the number one issue facing Fayetteville residents?
I think like the other two candidates said, obviously the pandemic and the strains of the pandemic are probably the number one issue facing Fayetteville residents, affecting health, safety, economy, all of it. A lot of businesses are struggling through the pandemic. I think the city has done good things to try to help with capacity restrictions. They're trying to open spaces that were city property, like sidewalks, parking lots, to try to allow more outside dining and refreshments like drinking outside. I think that those are the types of things that the city needs to continue to do, or a lot of our small businesses are really going to suffer and maybe not recover. In the long term, I think managed growth is probably the most important thing or issue facing Fayetteville. Fayetteville continues to be named one of the top cities to live in, and you keep seeing that the city is forecasting about 500,000 people coming to Washington County, just extremely high population growth. And where are we going to fit all these people? And I believe that the city's top priority right now is infill. And I don't believe that's what's best for Fayetteville, to just try to make room for every single person that wants to live in Fayetteville. I believe that we should be giving more deferential treatment to our current residents rather than to the future residents, to people that aren't even residents yet. We shouldn't be giving them more deferential treatment. I think that the infill or the massive growth will not necessarily, I don't think infill will solve the affordable housing issue. I think that that land value is very expensive in Fayetteville. It's not the building materials that are expensive, it's the land value. And so I do agree affordable housing is an issue, and that the city needs to make that a priority in trying to solve it or mitigate pricing out new residents or current residents. But I think that the city needs to make smart growth or managed growth their top priority, or that'll be the number one issue facing Fayetteville.
Thank you. We will now go to our next question. Mr. Firecat, we'll start with you. Do you support continued funding for Ozark Regional Transit?
You're going to be hard pressed to find anybody in any of the forums prior or this one to say no. everyone's going to go, yeah, we need the extra transport. It helps, and we can go into who it helps. But the only reason this question is ever being asked is because it hemorrhages money. It has financial issues, which are being addressed, to be fair to that. One of the suggestions I had heard, and it was a strange suggestion, but I found it interesting, was to add an included tax onto license plates bought. And while I don't necessarily say yay or nay to that, the difference between whether or not I'd agree to that type of financing is 50 cents versus $10 addition to something on that. And but again, we haven't heard all the numbers from that. People tend to stray from mills because you're limited to so many mills, and then you'll have to re-vote on it again later down the road. Having been said, right now it's more a matter of how do we finance it, and because all the suggestions and numbers aren't in, we don't know. But again, no one's likely to go, no, we can't use that. Let it die. It's a useful program, and the buses in every way we can get transit, especially when the population increases, every little bit's going to help. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell, we will now go to you for the same question. Do you support continued funding for Ozark Regional Transit?
Yes, I think that the people that use that bus system, it's essential to them. It's vital to them. Not everybody can afford a vehicle. Not everybody can afford insurance for their vehicle and the fuel for those vehicles. And so I think the continued funding of the Ozark Regional Transit System is essential for Fayetteville, not only for the current residents that use it, but as Mr. Firecat explained, that as the population grows, to encourage more people to use our public systems. It's free. It's great that the city does that. However, I do agree with Mr. Firecat in regards to maintaining the budget and making sure that it makes fiscal sense in terms of having many buses that are high capacity, maybe seat 80 people and maybe only see a third of that space occupied may not make sense. And so what I mean by that is maybe we need to scale back some of the bus systems or how it's run, maybe logistically. But as far as funding, I think that we need continued funding. I also think that the bus stops is an issue. These people are sitting at bus stops with no shelter. They're expected to just sit there in the rain, or they're expected to just sit there in the heat of summer. And so just a simple roof or structure, I think, would help increase ridership with Ozark Regional Transit.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Smith, same question. Do you support continued funding for Ozark Regional Transit?
Yes, absolutely. I disagree with Mr. Waddell about scaling back the services of our bus system and our public transit. I think we need to increase those services dramatically. That's why when the city had the opportunity to fund fare free rides on Ozark Regional Transit throughout the city of Fayetteville, so that you could transfer back and forth between Ort buses and Razorback Transit buses, I supported that. It's why on the transportation committee, I've pushed for the shelters at the stops that Mr. Waddell said that we needed, because that's absolutely true. The way we make our transit system sustainable so that it doesn't continue to hemorrhage money is to make it attractive and convenient and a reliable option that people want to use, not just people who need to use it because they don't have any other option. We need to cooperate with our other cities on this, because let's be realistic here. A lot of our trips, our end-to-end trips, are between communities in Fayetteville, or in Northwest Arkansas, between Fayetteville and Bentonville, or Fayetteville and Springdale. So we need our partners to do their part as well. And I hope that the Regional Planning Commission will approve the transit plan that we saw at City Council a couple of weeks ago, when that comes up on their agenda in a couple of weeks. But again, this comes back to a housing and land use issue, because we will never, no matter how great we make our transportation, we will never make it sustainable unless we do look at infill targeted infill around our transit stops so that there are enough people and enough jobs to ride the bus and pay for the miles that it drives. This is basic economics that we have to be real about. If we want to get cars off the street, we've got to get them into buses for their trips. We want to help people's traffic experience. We need to change the way we experience traffic, and we need to make our investments in a public transportation system that can be sustainable. We are going to have huge population growth. You don't keep winning awards as a great place to live because you're doing things wrong. And as long as we keep doing things right, people are going to want to come here. Saying that we're not going to plan for future residents is ignoring the fact that they're going to impact us one way or another when they get here. It's kind of like saying that we're not going to plan for college. We're not going to save anything for the future. We're just going to deal with right now. And I think that that's not a responsible way to run a household. And I think that's not a responsible way to run city government. And that's why I want to remember that some of our future residents are also our children. And the investments we make now are in their future as well.
Thank you, sir. We will now go to the next question. Mr. Waddell, we'll start with you. How should Fayetteville prepare its workforce in the 21st century?
I think preparing the generations, the future generations, as far as giving them the skill sets to go to the workforce. For me, mentorships and apprenticeships, I think, are key to helping the workforce. I had some mentors in my life that were critical to me being able to open up my law office and run my law office. Without those mentors, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so mentorships, apprenticeships, I think really make an impact on helping the workforce. I think also vocational schools, trade schools, more hands-on training, give our community a more well-rounded workforce. We need plumbers, we need electricians, we need that type of skill set as well, not just the university type schooling that you're used to seeing at Fayetteville. It'd be nice to see partnerships with the University of Arkansas implementing vocational schools, trade schools to help the workforce. I think that that those type schools will help meet that need that the University of Arkansas is not meeting. And also, I think just encouraging more mentorship programs and apprenticeship programs will help the workforce.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Smith, same question. How should Fayetteville prepare its workforce in the 21st century?
Well, getting people ready for a productive future is what I do every day. When I go into my classroom, I teach my kids math, but really I'm teaching them how to understand their world, navigate it with understanding, and reach their full potential. Traditional education like that is essential, but we know that it can't stop there because we know that it doesn't work for everybody for a variety of reasons. We need to recognize the broad range of pathways to success and self-fulfillment. Partnerships with our schools to promote transition services, to connect students and graduates with other opportunities. We're already pretty good at doing that for four-year universities and to some degree for our community colleges, but we need to get just as good at promoting other forms of job training and apprenticeships, like the program that we have here at Kimbrell Mechanical. That's a Ward 4 business over here just off of Mount Comfort, with the most successful on-the-job apprenticeship program in the state. They are the model that other companies who want to start a program are sent to look at when they ask the state how to do it. They train plumbers and HVAC techs right here so that they can go work across the country. We need to build on their model and establish more programs like that in other fields. And we need to empower and assist private entities in developing the talent pool that they need. Because at the end of the day, nobody knows what they need better than they do. So I don't think that the city needs to be setting up those programs ourselves as much as we need to be offering program support and facilitating the local industries in creating what they need. We also have our upcoming workforce development plan, which our economic vitality director, Devin Howland, has put huge amounts of effort into, and I've been thrilled to work on parts of that with him. It's fallen a little bit behind thanks to the pandemic and some other jobs that we've sent his way. But one of the major focuses of that is putting our public efforts towards identifying and eliminating the barriers that people face so that they can pursue their own prosperity. You know, barriers like transit and housing affordability, the things we've been talking about here play into this. Addressing our neurodiverse communities in Fayetteville so that they have the full opportunity to pursue their potential. Figuring out how we help formerly incarcerated residents get and keep jobs. All of those are challenges that we can look at that need to be addressed, and I look forward to using the city resources to do that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Firecat, you know, I have the opportunity to answer the same question. How should Fayetteville prepare its workforce in the 21st century?
Honestly, I think we do a pretty good job of it. The big issue is we're trying to bet against the future. We don't know what a workforce will look like in 2040 or 2050 or 2060. So when we're talking about what's available currently, I think we do a great job for what's current. And I think then it's essential that we're teaching critical thinking skills at a very young age. I particularly like our library for that, especially how it reaches out to the young. I would like to see something along the philosophies being taught. And the reason is because the philosophies assist in the critical thinking skills early in the game, especially like what are the ideas of falsifiability and how we understand why something has the potential to be true or not true, and how we use falsifiability to forge that. But you know, we get a pretty good start right away by having a university. And it's a university town that's easy to give into the population, an educated populace, and that's a bonus that a lot of cities don't get. So far, yes, there's a lot of trade schools out there, and I think we do promote quite well. The problem is, again, betting against what we don't know yet. So we can only call it by ear, as we say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We will now go to our next question. Councilmember Smith, we'll start with you. How can Fayetteville attract more businesses to town?
Attracting businesses to town is going to require looking at our entire economy and figuring out what we're good at and what's missing. Part of it goes back to the workforce development program. If we're going to attract businesses, we have to have the workforce for them here. And so some of that is partnership and working together to assess those needs and fill in the gaps. What we need to focus on is businesses with salaries that will, or wages that will pay the working folks here in Fayetteville, you know, what it costs to live here. And so that's going to be a struggle that we definitely can meet, because we, like I said, in our workforce development plan, are going to be looking at identifying those and developing a strategy for addressing those specific needs. There's a lot of other strategies that the Chamber of Commerce helps out on as far as business retention and expansion. And I know that y'all have been pushing for a long time for a fund that can help close the deal on infrastructure issues, so that when a business wants to come and set up shop and we don't have a place quite ready for them yet, that we can be nimble on our feet and ready to kind of meet those needs, so that they can come here to Fayetteville instead of going somewhere else that might already have that in place. We've already got a good head start on that with the money that was approved in our 2019 bond project. We've actually put that to use some in that capacity, developing some roads through our economic park so that we can unlock new parcels of land. And those are the kinds of opportunities that I will continue to look for.
Thank you, sir. We will now go to Mr. Firecat. Same question. How can Fayetteville attract more businesses to town?
Well, streamlining the permit process would assist a great deal. We've already got a great deal to offer here, as we say. You have an educated force here. You have multiple trades here. So we're ready for the jobs. We just need the jobs here. Startup Junkies does what they can. They do a great job trying to get new businesses up and running. And that's going the local route with it. In terms of outside, again, that comes down to how hard is it for us to actually set up? How long is this going to take? Is it easier for us to set up in another city that has less of a waiting period? And if we get to prioritizing, streamlining that process of permit approval, that should assist a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell, same question. How can Fayetteville attract more businesses to town?
I think providing leadership that's accessible to these businesses that are trying to establish here. I think businesses that are looking to lay roots in Fayetteville need to have access to leadership in Fayetteville to discuss projects, to discuss ordinances. Like Mr. Firecat said, I think there's a lot of complicated regulations and permit processes for a lot of the new businesses that may cause some of the businesses to go elsewhere, maybe Rogers or Northwest or other areas in Northwest Arkansas. I don't want to see essential businesses leaving Fayetteville. I think seeing Highland Oncology go to Springdale was a travesty. I think that Fayetteville needs to be offering incentives to keep existing businesses like that here. Or I believe that not only the regulations, but taking a good look at the regulations to make sure that common individuals can understand these regulations, digest them, and not have to waste undue delay or hire experts to try to understand these regulations to establish in Fayetteville. So I believe just looking at the permit processes and making them just a little bit more easier for common individuals to understand and not require experts to have to come in and try to explain complicated permit processes. I think that would be a very helpful way to get businesses here.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Firecat, we'll now go to our next question and start with you. This is going to be kind of a two-parter question. What are your goals for your first year in office, and what kind of projects would you like the city to be undertaking?
Well, I've got the 67-page report here, the single stream recycling program. This is the single most impressive way that we deal with our waste. This has reduced waste to 80%, over 80%. It's not an argument. There's nothing to debate. Now, there's an argument briefly that was put up that there's a certain residue or sludge. But in page 9 of a downloadable PDF off the city website, we state that even if even assuming 19% of the collected materials as residue were lost, the pilot resulted in an average of 2.03 pounds of recyclables per unit, 81%, 2.5 average pounds collected per week, and an 83% increase over the 2015 multifamily average. This is assuming, yes, we have an extra waste. The waste itself is not 100% dealt with, of course, because we don't live in a Star Trek universe. We don't have the ability to deal with 100% of it, but we do best what can. And via volume, there is only a financial aspect of this to worry about. And for that, I hear about it in the last 2 years. The amount of times I've heard anything brought up about it, it looks like this right here. Now, secondly, we need to be supporting Free Gig. They're close to a need to evolve into paid positions Free Geek deals with a great deal of e-waste. And they don't just curve it for one ward. They don't just curve it for Fayetteville. They don't just curve it for Arkansas. And they also do it for Oklahoma. They're taking in and stopping a great amount of e-waste from going to our landfills. And that's impressive and should be supported, but we're saying that we support it. I hear the city say it supports it, but it physically does nothing because it is a volunteer organization. They've paid nothing toward it. They assist in no way other than name. And I suggest we get behind them on that. Lastly, I will inevitably want to address an issue about background checks when attempting to rent. Background checks can go anywhere up from $75 to $150 per individual per application with no guarantee of rental. There's a certain adjustment I'd like to make. Unfortunately, 5 seconds, guys.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell, we'll now go to you for the same two-parter question. What are your goals for your first year in office, and what kind of projects would you like the city to be undertaking?
I think my goals for the first year in office would be to make sure that the bond issues from 2019 are being implemented timely. I think that making sure the police department moves forward, that is met in a timely manner, that the arts corridor is met in a timely manner. I believe that all these issues have already been voted on and that the city should not be laying roadblocks or interfering with any of these issues. I think that my first goal in office would just be to try to make sure that those 2019 bond issues are implemented and that they're implemented timely. Another goal for me would be, again, just to try to manage the smart growth or the expected growth of Fayetteville in a smart way, and not just try to infill every little bit of the area. My goal would be to just provide more quality growth to Fayetteville. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Smith, same question. What are your goals for your first year back in office, and what kind of projects should the city be undertaking?
I think the projects list is pretty well defined right now. When we passed the 2019 bond, that was a commitment to 3 phases of projects that are probably going to last us 10 to 12 years. But I do agree that building our new police station and fire station on time, as we are currently on time, is important. It's a priority. I also think that we need to make sure we get the details right. And continue other projects like the arts corridor. We already have broken ground on that project, have the parking deck sorted out and well underway. And so I look forward to seeing those projects through. Other projects that we've kind of got started, the College Avenue reconstruction, I think is going to be a huge and much. Construction will be uncomfortable, but the final product will be very welcome. I hope we can, when that's over, we can look at opportunities to do a similar makeover on parts of Weddington. In fact, walkability is one of the things that I want to pursue. We've got something like 4 miles from Garland out to Double Springs Road with only 7 signalized crossings on Weddington and gaps in the sidewalk even. We need more opportunities to address that, and I've already begun work with our transportation committee to look at whether or not taking over parts of Weddington from the state might be an opportunity. We need to work on connecting our trails as part of that same walkability effort, and that's a project that we do a little bit of every year, and we'll try to make sure that we are investing enough out here on the west side of town. Neighborhood planning is absolutely one of my top priorities. When we talk about planning for smart growth, that is a phrase that is absolutely necessary. We don't have the best neighborhood planning, especially west of the highway, where we have lots of open fields and we can see housing developments spring up 60 to 100 acres at a time. If we don't have adequate plans for that, then resistance to even minor density increases in the city core, where it can take advantage of existing services, turns into millions of dollars of new infrastructure that we have to lay down in green fields. And I want to make sure that we have plans that include our neighbors, so that we have solid goals through all areas of Fayetteville. And in that, we need to work on an annexation plan so that we can protect our boundaries from development that's currently going on in the county. We have red dirt pits just across the city limits out in county regulated territory. And I would like to see what we can do to preserve those areas and develop a green sort of emerald necklace around Fayetteville, so that we aren't just sending our shingled roofs out to the state line. I want to focus on parks. We've got a new park on the old Razorback Golf Course coming up, and I want to make sure that gets developed, as well as seeing through the new Bryce Davis master plan that we approved in the bond, so that we can finally make that park all that it deserves to be.
Thank you. Alrighty. Well, at this point, we've got just enough time to begin on our closing statements. We will reverse the order from the opening statement. So, Councilmember Smith, we will start with you. Mr. Firecat, we'll have you second, and Mr. Waddell, we'll end with you. Mr. Smith, whenever you're ready.
All right, well, thank you again to the Chamber of Commerce for putting this event together so everyone can meet their candidates, at least those of us who participated today. Despite the pandemic adaptations, this has been every bit as helpful as I think forums in the past have been. In my first term, we faced those same challenges of dealing with the pandemic, among others, and we've turned a lot of them into opportunities. We've shown decisive leadership on matters of public health. We enacted a public mask ordinance before the state did. We've reinstated our Board of Health to offer us expert local guidance. And we've increased the opportunities for businesses to use their outdoor and public space. And those changes need to be made permanent. Speaking of the outdoors, in the last 3 years, we've preserved over 415 acres of natural land in West Fayetteville. Centennial Park, Woolsey Wet Prairie, Markham Hill, and that doesn't count the 50 acres that we helped negotiate on Markham Hill that went into private preservation. The best is yet to come, though, because we just 2 weeks ago approved the naming rights for Underwood Park on the old Razorback Golf Course. Something that neighbors have been asking for years, that I was thrilled to work with the Underwoods on. And I mentioned Bryce Davis in the last segment. That's kind of the biggest park in Fayetteville that nobody knows about, and it's on the books to get a makeover. So there's still one more park gap out west of Rupel and south of Weddington that I think we need to work on filling, and that'll be a goal in the next term. I've already been in the trenches advocating for affordable housing and the infrastructure that goes along with it. I talked about all of this history because there's still a lot of work to be done, especially on that last topic. And I want you to know what I'm committed to. I will always listen and be available. I will continue hosting our Ward 4 meetings, even when some other council members would prefer that we reduce that frequency. I think it's important to hear from Ward 4 residents on all the issues in front of council. I'll continue reaching out to property owners associations and using my social media to make sure that residents in Fayetteville know what's going on at City Hall, and defending the public's opportunities for public comment at our formal meetings. I will fight to make sure that the unique issues of West Fayetteville are remembered: traffic, our trails, the safety of our suburban neighborhoods. I will look for compromise and keep the best interests of all of Fayetteville in mind, not just the special interests that want to sometimes put themselves above the rest of the community. I will keep working to get the details right, even on big projects, just like we did with the traffic around Holcomb School. Excuse me. And I'm going to keep working to use all of our community resources together, because there's really nothing we can't do when we work with everybody in our community. That's the vision that I have for Fayetteville. We're a growing city, and we're every bit as awesome as I remember it as a kid. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Firecat, we will now go to you for your closing statement.
Well, ultimately, I don't think anybody here that's running wants anything bad for Fayetteville. I don't think any of us are secretly supervillains taking a convoluted plan to somehow destroy the city. We all want what's best. And we have a different idea about how to get there. We have a different idea about what constitutes a priority. We all have our opinions. The question you got to ask is what you want for your management, because you're assigning us the office. No one is beholden to an office. We don't own an office. You give us the office, and we have, after 4 years, the ability to reapply. And that's great. I've always appreciated that. The thing I'm really wanting to make sure to do is say no when you need to hear no. And I'm willing to be hated for saying no. I'm willing to be hated by you for you. And I do this because I think it's the right thing to do. And I believe that there's a priority issue, but again, you have to decide yourselves whether or not that's what you believe. I believe it, and I'd like your vote if you like. If not, I understand, because a vote should be earned. And that's for all of us. Hell, maybe none of us have earned your vote. Maybe none of us deserve your vote. For all I know, we might all suck. But I like to think the majority of us here would try to do the best we could. And I'd like your vote specifically because I'm selfish that way. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Waddell, you will now have your opportunity to make your closing statement.
Thank you. I appreciate the Chamber of Commerce for putting on this forum. I think this may be one of the only forums where you get to see the candidates kind of all participating in one forum with no opportunity to really prepare for these questions. The questions are thrown at us and we give 2 or 3 minutes to respond, versus a lot of these other questionnaires that we receive, we're given maybe a week to respond. And so you can really dive in and get time to be more informed and form a proper response. So it's difficult in these types of debates or forums to just immediately respond to answers. When you go back and think about it, you'd like to maybe adjust your answer a little bit, or maybe just be a little bit more informed on an issue. But I think all the candidates showing up today and participating is critical for the voters of Ward 4 and for Fayetteville. I don't understand why Ms. Hertzberg is not present. I mean, I think it disenfranchises the voters. I recognize that we all have scheduling conflicts and we all have busy schedules, but this should be a priority. Showing up to forums like this, answering questions, or listening to our residents' questions, listening to Chamber of Commerce questions. I think all the candidates that show up, like Mr. Firecat said, I think are showing that this is a priority for them, and that I don't think anybody here is a bad person, or I don't think anyone has bad intentions for Fayetteville. I think all of us genuinely want to represent Fayetteville the best we can, but we all just have different ways of doing it. I think that some of the distinguishing factors from me and from Mr. Smith and Mr. Firecat is with Mr. Smith, I disagree with his decision regarding the school resource officers. I disagree with his decision in roadblocking some of the police department development. In regards to Mr. Firecat, I disagree in him not wanting to fund the arts programs, Theater Square, the Walton Arts Center. I do agree with him that we do need to maintain fiscal responsibility, but at the same time, we need to provide fun, safety, and entertainment for Fayetteville residents. I hope that I have your vote, and I hope you'll show up and vote period, but vote for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our last virtual forum for this series of candidate forums. My name was Taylor Shelton. We look forward to having all of you join us, hopefully in person, for our next series of candidate forums in partnership with the Fayetteville Public Library. We will be looking to upload this video to our social media and our YouTube page as soon as we can. We're going to get that to our team so we can get it edited and uploaded. If any of the candidates have anything they'd like to reach out to me for as far as the transcript goes, feel free. I'll shoot you the link of this video once it is uploaded. But until then, thank you everybody for participating and joining. From us at the chamber to all the candidates, we know that it is a great sacrifice running a campaign, and all of you have done it very well and have done it very respectfully. So thank you for your participation in this. For everybody that is joining us, thank you again for tuning in. I see a lot of familiar faces in the participant list, so we look forward to seeing you on our future forums. Thank you.